Time.
It is time.
All right. Like to call to order the special called workshop for Town of Weaverville, June 11th, 2024. Are we ready to go on to item number 2, Maribel? 171 Monticello Road water commitment renewal?
Yes, sir, we are. Dale, if you will speak, you can speak from there. This is a very quick agenda item.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and Council. The Maribel project out on Monticello Road, as happens many times, and particularly in their case, their 1-year approval for their water commitment has passed, and they need to renew that. In the interim, they have reduced their building unit count from 168 units to 156, with a comparable reduction in flow of about 4,000 gallons per day. So we'd ask that you consider renewing their water commitment for another 1 year.
Anybody have any?
When did
Questions
the
or-
commitment end?
On April 4th.
So we would go back to April 4th to next year, is that right? Or does it begin in June?
What we'd prefer it to do is start this week.
Okay.
So 1 year from today.
Yes, please. And there is an associated fee with that, even though they paid that fee, the water commitment fee, when they were first approved, because this is a renewal, they'll be asked to pay that fee again based on their unit.
Did they happen to tell you which units they would do away with, or just total?
It was just a reduction in the number of units. And as they progressed with their design process, they just couldn't meet that original number.
6 units was what was approved by town council with that conditional district. They came in with 168, and then, as you might recall, there was some negotiation downward to the unit count, and they landed at 156.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Anybody want to make a motion to approve this?
I'd move to approve it.
Second, if we need it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving on to the budget workshop number 4, final review and direction to the town manager on proposed budget. Now let's take over.
Yes, sir, thank you. You have had the copy of your agenda packet for a couple weeks now. And so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the departmental budgets. I think that what I've heard from you all is that you really want to spend some time talking about fund balance and where we are with fund balance. And I want Tanya to go through and explain fund balance and how that will work for us. And then I think what I've heard from you most is that we really dig into the enhanced budget pieces. And we talk about where we go from there. And so what you will see, in addition to another copy of the agenda packet, because we were unsure if our system was going to work tonight, but so far, knock on wood, it is. You will also see a copy of the fee schedule, which is a few pages, and you'll see some various colors of revisions that are in there. I will tell you that the largest or the most significant revision that you will see is the water revenue, the water rates. And so you'll see that as changed. The different colors mean nothing except that different staff worked on that portion, and so it changes the color based on the person who is working on that portion of the fee schedule. So it is ready to go if you give us direction tonight to have it prepared for next week's meeting. It will be ready for you to approve without the strike throughs and the various colors. The other thing that you have in front of you is a one pager that looks like this, that's actually going to be on the screen. And this is where I wanted to, as we talk about the enhancements, to talk about your options and also give you some additional recommendations that I have for you to consider as we're looking at options on potentially funding those enhanced additions to the budget. So with that, I will go ahead and ask Ms. Dozier to jump in and start talking to us about fund balance.
Good evening. Yeah, I just wanted to explain a little bit more about fund balance. Make sure everyone understands. So it's only ever calculated once a year. That's at June 30th of each year, and that's part of the audit. So the things that affect fund balance, any revenues that come in over budget and any expenditures that don't get spent go back into fund balance at the end of the year. So when we forecast our revenues, of course, we try and be accurate, but a little bit on the conservative side because you don't want to run out of money partway through the year. So our revenues, if we've done a good job, usually come in about 5% above where we budget. So that budgeted. So that goes back in. Our expenditures, of course, we have much more control over expenditures. We always stay under budget. Our philosophy is never spend it or lose it, by the end of the year. If we don't need it, we don't spend it. That goes back into fund balance. The other thing that goes in is projects that don't get finished. The streets, for example, the last 2 years, we've carried over streets money that didn't get spent during the year. So that's gone back into fund balance at the end of the year. So there's a lot of moving parts to figure out fund balance. It's hard to say during the year where we are because we really don't know. You don't know until the end of the audit where it's going to be. As far as our target is based on our revenues. Revenues, we're not going to know for sure until, like, our sales tax, for example, comes in 2 and 3 months after it's earned. So it's going to be September before we actually get our June sales tax that we accrue back into there. So we're not going to know our target until September. We can estimate it, but it's hard to say exactly where we're going to be. For example, last year we ended the year, or our fund balance last year was 7.6 million, and it's been high for several years, as you know. We appropriated 3.6 of that in this current year's budget. That right there is bringing it down to 4 million and getting close. So for the first time really in several years, we're actually kind of getting close to our target. Something we'll need to look at. But again, as we talked about at the last workshop, that 40% target is set by town council. And you can decide to dip below that. If we do dip below that, it's not the end of the world. It's not really a big deal. It's still plenty of cushion. 40% equates to like 4.8 months of your budget. It's like having 4.5, 4.8 months of savings in your savings account. So the manager and I talked this morning and kind of looked at the numbers again, and we would be comfortable adding another 200,000 to what we've appropriated. Right now there's 868, I believe, in the budget. I'd be comfortable going up another couple 100,000 there. So if there's things in the enhanced budget that you want to go ahead and add now, we can do that. The other thing we've talked about is waiting until we have final numbers in October when our audit is complete. We see exactly where we are. We know exactly where our target is. And then you can decide at that point to add anything. If you don't do it now, it doesn't mean it can't be added at any point during the year. We can always do a budget amendment, use fund balance, or if our revenues come in higher than expected, you can use the excess revenues. You can always do a budget amendment during the year to add anything on the enhanced budget that you might want to. That kind of help?
Yes, thank you. Does anybody have questions?
Would any projects be in danger or something we need to do critically if we wait until the final audit's done? I would prefer to do that. And also, question I should know, but when will we have pretty good estimates on property revaluation? Because even if we don't raise taxes, taxes are gonna go up with revaluation.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't know that until, yeah, and I'm thinking February, March at the earliest. And those still, even at that point in time, those are not really solid because there are appeals and various processes. But, that's a really tough one. It's, I would say, early spring.
We can get some estimates before then, I think.
We can get some estimates, but that's truly what they are. We have seen, large, fast changes, from our estimates to what we get from after revals. But we certainly can do it.
And even with the addition of the 200,000, that would still give us over 4 months of operating capital.
The only thing that I don't know about like lead time, depending on what you want to, what you're thinking about adding. If it's a piece of equipment that's got a long lead time, you might want to do that now rather than wait till October. Or if it's a project that's more urgent.
But I will jump in here and say that even with lead time, we don't know that either. Frankly, we have been told, a number, I'm gonna give the garbage truck as an example. We were told, oh, in 2 weeks, we'll let you know. In 2 weeks, we'll let you know. In 2 weeks, we'll let you know. So I'm not even gonna, I hope we don't even try to hang our heads on lead time at this point. I think, as we go through these enhancements, if you can give us your thoughts about these, and I actually have some recommendations for you on some of them, then we can look into the lead time issue and bring that up, next week. But if you look at the list, there are not a lot of items that even would have, the lead time issue would apply to. I mean, you're talking the fast charger, the knuckle, the other, some things like that, but a lot of the others, the lead time issue is not going to. Shall we jump into the enhanced?
Yes.
Budget?
Yes.
So the strategic planner / urban designer / planner 3 position, because of needing to get to a place where county council determines what it truly is looking for in this position. My recommendation would be if you will kind of glance at 1 through 4 on this other sheet. This will give you an idea of what the way that I'm thinking. What I was thinking is that this would be one that we would hold until October, which would give us time to have some conversations, maybe have a workshop to further discuss that position and what we would like to see out of it, as opposed to going ahead and moving on that right away. Again, not saying move it off the list, but certainly look at the audit and see where we are with fund balance. DC fast charger, this comes down to truly a county council policy as to whether you want us to continue with complete EV products. We do have the hybrids. Currently, we do have 3 EVs right now in the police department, and so this truly is going to be a policy issue as to where you would like to go with that one. The grapple truck with the knuckle boom loader, I have said a 2, 3, or 4. One is that we can use some of that 200,000, although it does obviously. The knuckle boom loader is 228,000, so it's over that amount that Tanya's now telling us that we can spend. So I would encourage you to maybe hold on that one as well until October after the audit, unless you feel like dropping below your target is appropriate in this situation. It is a safety precaution that we have this, and so that is the one area where I would say that dipping below the fund balance this one time may be appropriate, but again, that is your discussion to have there. The Main Street Nature Park upgrades, I would say, is another item that you may want to hold until October. or after the audit. And then again, this October is just the time frame that we use because our audit is typically presented in October, November. Granicus for STR monitoring. This last meeting of the planning board went with a motion to recommend, a majority motion to recommend the regulation of STR. If town council wishes to go that route, I would recommend the Granicus monitoring software. And right now, currently Woodfin is paying $8,000 a year for that. I use the $10,000 because they have been under contract for a couple of years now, and so I'm assuming that rate is gonna go up.
Can you tell us what it does for that $10,000?
Yes, it monitors anyone who has, I would say registered, because I don't think it's truly a register. But it goes out and it picks like a lot of softwares. It picks up where the verbos are, where the short-term rentals are, and it keeps a monitor. I have not actually seen it in action, but I've talked to a good bit to Woodfin's manager. It works well for them to be able to see, oh, we've had 5 pop up this week, or we've had 3 pop off this week, or, no, we've lost 10 in the last month, or whatever the case may be. So it monitors based on all of the information that's out there, on short-term rentals. And I can certainly get more information. We can even do a demonstration.
How do they acquire that with accuracy? How do they acquire the information?
Again, they pull it from various sources off of the internet, Verbo, all of these homestay sites of various ways they pull the information. It's, we have to face it. We live in a world where everything about us as individuals practically is in the internet these days. So, they pull the information from various sources. But again, I can get you a list of
No, it's
exactly
okay.
where they pull it
No,
from.
it's okay.
That's helpful.
If we go with what the planning board's recommended, something like that, would we really need it? I mean, as few as we have and the fact that we've had no problems.
That would be a decision for you all. I think that if we are going to enforce it, if town council gives us the charge to enforce, then we need tools in our basket.
And we'll talk about that then, like the tools to enforce and who would enforce and how much it costs to enforce.
Absolutely. But I would say that if town council, if you have an idea that you are going to accept the planning board recommendation, I would say that becomes, in my view, a part of number 2, which would be included in starting the process, or maybe even hold off until number 3 after the audit process, and then we could sign an agreement with the company.
So Granicus is really a monitor. So it's not really a regulator. It just,
It's a fine.
It would monitor all the permitted short-term rentals or also any that are not permitted? How does that work?
It's my understanding that it monitors any short-term rental from any of those sites that it pulls information. That's not a great answer to your question, but it's, as we all talked about a number of times, STRs is something that everyone is still learning. We're learning how to deal with this and that kind of thing. So I can certainly get you more information.
I can look it up.
my concern is that there's a court decision from Morehead City in the last 2 years that dealt with regulation and permitting those short-term rentals. And basically the answer was you can't. So there's a line somewhere that we have to make sure we don't want to get into a situation where we're violating regulations that have been precedented. Put it out there.
Is the difference between permitting and regulating, is that where the line is?
Well, in the lawsuit that considered both of those things as you're not allowed to do that.
And I'm asking because Woodfin permits, but they don't regulate.
I guess it's what are they permitting?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the difference is between a permit and a regulation, but it's,
Yeah,
Don't think that's correct.
Don't
Right.
think.
That's not correct. That it's backwards. The Wilmington case, which is actually the Wilmington
Yeah.
case, says that you can regulate, but having a lottery for permits was not correct. Was not legally allowed. Now, it's been a long time since I've read the Wilmington case, but I have read it. And what they said is that if you're going to regulate as a zoning regulation that applies to all homes in a zoning district, you can do it that way. So it was really in the dicta of the case, it was showing you a way through.
It's kind of a land use specification for short-term rentals.
and on Woodfin's website, there is the place where you go fill out for your permit.
And that, I'll say that, Councilmember McGuire is right. You can regulate. The courts have said you can regulate. They have also said you can require a zoning permit. What you cannot do is do a registration, which sounds more like an annually coming in, and I would, James and I have had this conversation. If you required an annual zoning permit, I think that's getting too close to a registration process. And so, we're getting into the weeds on a short-term rental discussion, which I think we're gonna have on the 24th, perhaps. So I don't want to cut off the conversation, but do want us to be clear that we can do them legally under our zoning regulations. But we do have to, I do have to be careful and stay within the limited amount of guidance that we have from our Court of Appeals right now.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item that we have on the list, and I hope everyone has the most updated. It ends with part-time recreation. It's the last one we sent out.
Yep.
I realized that there were a couple of iterations. So the next one is parking lot below Public Works. I would recommend funding this at this point in time. We need parking. I was not a big fan of it when Mr. Pennell brought it up because it's using up a lot more space that you know, is on the property that where the department is, but we need, folks at the lake need parking. And so I would recommend that actually be funded, as a part of that, approximately 200,000 in fund balance. Eller Cove Watershed Trail System. So I've got some somewhat good news on this. We actually have made it to the second phase of the process, with the Buncombe County, open space passive recreation plan, grants. And so I have a virtual interview about the project on the 25th. If we make it past that phase, then we go out for a site visit and we take our site planner from Elevated Trail Design, who will give a really nice presentation and walk us through some of the property. I would, at this point in time, without knowing where we are with a grant for that, I would say let's hold on.
That makes sense.
Additional quarter year of Public Works Assistant, sorry, that should have said Assistant Director. I would like to request in my conversations with Mr. Pennell and all that he has going on, and you'll see a number of these projects are actually within his department. I would actually request town council's consideration of adding one more quarter, so that we can get, so we can go ahead and begin at least advertising for an assistant public works director. And as you all might know, my goal there is that we look for an assistant who is also an engineer if we can find. And this would also play into my eventual succession planning for that, although Dale twisted his arm and he's staying until he's 95. So
So do you want to move it from a quarter to a half?
we've got a half in there now, so I wanted to add an additional quarter, so it'd be 3/4.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry, that I
Oh,
could have.
okay, I get it now.
But that would be basically another 3 months. so that we can go ahead and get the advertisement process going.
And so that number reflects the 3/4, is that
That's
right? Okay,
That would be, this number reflects the addition that I'm
gotcha,
asking
okay.
to be included.
So we've already approved a half somewhere else, is what you're saying, and this is another quarter.
You haven't approved it until you adopt the budget.
It's
Mhm.
in the
But-
proposed
But it's
budget.
in the proposed budget.
Okay.
Okay, so additional funding, for the street improvement program. We talked about this briefly at one of our previous, I think it was maybe not the last one, because that was public hearing, but maybe that one before that. So because of a number of reasons, COVID and just a number of projects that have been going on in public works, we have accumulated $1.4 million in our street improvement program. Those funds are actively being spent right now, as we speak. Those streets are being repaired. I did not include any more in the proposed budget, for this upcoming year. But I want you to strongly consider potentially adding, because what that does, it allows us to continue the program. Whereas otherwise, once we finish this $1.4 million worth of work that we're working on now, it puts us a year out. And when you look at it from the standpoint of, we've got to bid it, we've got to plan for it, with all of those things, it would make sense for us to go ahead and add a little bit more if we see that we're going to have some additional funds. So I have said on that one, a 3 or a 4. Again, looking at this list, these are not necessarily, my 1 through 3s are not necessarily priorities. They're just my way of trying to get us to think about timeframes and about funding these projects if you want funding. Same thing applies with the recreation complex, pavilions, restrooms, and storage buildings. We have received a couple of quotes, and we're looking at, I believe one of them was in the 115 range, below the 150. But again, there's still quite a bit of funding there that we would need. And so on this one, I have felt that it's a solid 3 that we hope to see where we are with the audit on this one as well. Active Weaverville community request. As you see, that's a huge chunk of change. And my recommendation is that we see what the Active Weaverville committee fleshes out further in their process. And we get a better understanding of how that $525,000 will be used. You'll recall this was just brought to your attention a whole month ago at this. So it's very difficult to take a budget that we've already programmed out and then figure out, okay, let's just find out where we can come up with another $500,000 real quick. So I would like to see it fleshed out further, and certainly not diminish the work that the Active Weaverville Committee, the Backhead group is working on, but to get more information, to better understand where we are and what it would take to get there, before we spend this kind of funding on this the project. So another one that has been added at your recent council meeting was for consideration is the Florida Avenue Sidewalk Project, to include streets and to widen the sidewalks, and that $45,000 does not include and I shared with you all at last meeting the extensive work that Duke Power says would need to be done to accomplish their recommended approach to this. That one, in my view, there are other priorities to be considered, and so I really don't have a time frame on that one. I would say that we could definitely hold it until the third option there and look at it from the standpoint of the audit and where we are at that point. Zoom room upgrades or an alternative. So one of the things that I really want to talk to you about, you all know, and I'm frustrated, everybody that's back here has been frustrated over our capabilities. Tonight, we're working on a Band-Aid. As far as I know, it's working. I have not gotten any messages. This has been a very difficult system. It's an old system, even though we've upgraded some pieces of it. We have not upgraded it to the point where it needs to be. And every time we run this and we have a problem, it does not reflect well on it. And I don't like that. I think that we should be top notch and we should be showing our meetings in a top notch manner. So the question that I have for you is, you know, do you want to go the route of buying a brand new product? We would still be able to use some of our hardware that we have now, but we would need to get a new system in place. And spend is what is substantial, around 20,000 is where we've estimated, just based on some quotes that we've received. One of the quotes is a bit smaller than that. And I would recommend that this be something that you have some conversation with amongst yourself about policy. And the policy would be how strongly do you feel that these meetings should be not televised, but streamed and placed on YouTube? Because I think that weighs into how much you want to spend and when you want to spend it, in my view. I will tell you, I went and took a look at our YouTube rating, so to speak, just to see how many people actually look at our meetings, and most of them were in the range of 9 people, or 9 views, 16 views. We had one meeting where there were 48 views, but the vast majority were well below 20. And I know for a fact that some of those views are me and staff going in to look at them and see if it's working, because it counts every time you go in and look.
Sure.
So I really would like for town council to have some conversation about that before we even pursue any more options.
And can you tell us how old the remnants of the original system are? Okay, that's what I figured, but just wanted to ask.
Yeah, this whole box, or not all of it, but the majority of that box is from the beginning.
Okay.
Of the beginning of the audio.
So is an option that we just maybe discuss and decide not to Zoom meetings and we still record audio, right? And those are available the next day.
We have been, in the 9 years that I've been here, we've been recording audio and placing it on the webpage, and people listen to it if they want to. It's sitting and listening to audio. It's probably not as
Entertaining.
if you will, as watching. But you know, to me, it comes down to cost versus value, and what your philosophies are in that regard.
So Zoom was basically a COVID thing, as far as I'm remembering. That's kind of when that started.
Yes, that's.
So if we were to decide not to Zoom the meetings anymore, but just make the audio available, there's no cost to that.
We-
Okay,
We have
we're all set.
very simple, I'm not sure where it went, but there's a.
This thing?
Right there.
Yeah.
That's it. And
Okay.
we upload it with software that we have currently. It's there.
And that's available to everybody the next day. Okay.
Which I think is sufficient.
It seems sufficient.
Yeah.
So I will say, as your ADA coordinator, some of the software does add some ADA accessibility components, that you just don't have without that. So that's just something to think about. Most of the components were replaced when the last sort of, big expenditure on this, but there certainly are old pieces that are still in that cabinet.
Yeah.
We have spent right at $25,000 just trying to get it. In the last very short period of time.
Okay.
And again, we can still use you know, the majority of those pieces. So I'm not saying we throw out the entire system. But I don't feel that our current system is doing this service.
And this evening, it looks like we have one. Is that right? What I'm seeing there?
One.
He's saying 5
I can't see.
on Zoom. We have 4 on Zoom. Oh, yeah, I'm seeing the names on the side. I was looking at the pictures. Thank you.
And then my final thought, and then you all have conversation of like, is a part-time recreation assistant for after hours. This would be a no benefit person. This would be to assist, Ms. Myers in a number of things, setting up for events, setting up for storytelling, for, music events, those kinds of things at the community center. Not only that, locking our, what has become a really problematic, locked recreation complex where for the last Wednesdays, we've had, young people climbing fences and, getting into our complex and playing loud music at night and doing a number of, just really giving law enforcement a really difficult time trying to keep up with them. And so this would give us someone who could actually go by and check on things and make sure everything's okay. So that we're not pulling a law enforcement officer off the street from doing what they need to be doing. Could simply help us with those kinds of things. So I think we're growing to the place that we need someone more than Ms. Myers to take care of things when we're operating literally 7 days a week at the community center and the rec complex.
Well, what would she do? Report it to the police? Just ask them to leave or what?
Well, for one thing, make sure that all the locks are in place, they haven't been cut and that kind of thing. Yeah, if it came down to, she had someone that was, like we've caught some folks in the last few weeks, who are actually in the complex and then told us they didn't climb the fence. But the doors, it's still locked and we have pictures of them climbing the fence. And that kind of thing. So she or he could be someone who could report to the police department or simply say, folks, this is closed. Go ahead and move on out. And then if it rose to the level of calling the police department, then we could handle it in that way. But not only just the rec complex, we're looking at things like, as you all know, storytelling has been a huge impact on our community center as well as music events, those kinds of things. Ms. Myers can't set those things up herself. She cannot set up a stage by herself. She cannot set up, all of the chairs, and we can't really truly expect her to be doing all of those things. So I think we're just at the point where we're having those growing, we're growing, and we're going to have to find ways to work, to make sure that our property is being secured correctly, but also we're setting up for events and that sort of thing. A lot of the folks that do the storytelling and do the theater and do those kinds of things are folks that frankly cannot handle setting up for themselves. When we had Whittle, who was doing the programming, a lot of them were able to do this themselves, but we no longer have that in volunteers or volunteers. Nor do I ever recommend that we use volunteers to be paid weights of chairs and stages and that kind of thing. So I will give you, I sat down and I went through and just made a real short list of things that I wanted to recommend to you. And unfortunately, that's in that 200,000, but again, this is your budget and you can tell me where we need to go in a different direction. But I've added up 10,000 for the Granicus monitoring. Again, if town council wishes to go that direction with regard to the STRs. 85,000 for the parking lot. 32,500 for the additional quarter of the Public Works Assistant Director. And then the 19,300 for the part-time recreation assistant. Offer that to you as my thoughts about it. And certainly want to hear from you.
And those four total.
I'm sorry, those four total 146,800. So it's really important that we hear from you tonight, because as we plan for 1 week from today, we are to meet again, and we have to have for you the finalized version of the fee schedule, the finalized version of the pay plan, which is already included in the budget, but it has to be adopted by you with the budget. And then finally, the budget ordinance, which puts everything in motion. So it's really important that we hear from you tonight as to what you want in here, because we frankly have very little time now between now and next week to turn this around and get you the documents that you have to legally sign before we meet you.
Now,
Unless you want to add another one.
The 146 come out in place of the 200,000. Is that what you're saying, or addition?
The 146,800 would be in, just in my initial recommendation to you, be a part, would come out of that 200,000 additional fund balance.
So if we add the knuckle boom loader, that's another 228. So part of that is still within that 200,000, and the other part would be what, below fund balance? Is that how we would fund that?
That would come out of fund balance. Yes, if you.
If we
you
choose to
all-
do that.
If you all wanted to go with the knuckle boom loader, that strikes any of those that I just recommended. Because you're using the entire 200,000 plus another additional 28,000.
So I'm working from, if we do all of the things you recommend, and we're at the 146,800, and we add the knuckle boom loader, we're over, but we can do both of those. We can do your list and the knuckle boom loader if we choose to dip below the 40% fund balance. Am I understanding that right?
Yes.
Or raise taxes.
Or raise taxes.
And what percentage would that put us at? If maybe that's not easy to do on the fly.
Percentage of.
If
what?
we did the call it 400,000 instead of 200,000, what would that, how far below the 40 would it be?
Don't know.
Okay.
We might not even dip below. We don't know. We're gonna have a lot. I heard today, like the streets project isn't gonna all get spent by the end of June, so some of that's gonna get reappropriated. And go back into fund balance. So.
But it would be nice if we, instead of reappropriating it, took that and put it toward the 300,000 that we were asked to do additional street improvement. In other words,
Well,
continue to do street
We're under
improvement.
contract for the 1.4 right now, so we're under contract to pay that full amount, so whether we spend it all by June or not, it's gonna go into fund balance. I mean, it has to be reappropriated because we are under contract
Okay,
for that full amount.
good. Commitment for the roads.
You know, I gotta say, I think all of these items have merit, but all of these items are certainly none that are so critical that they can't wait until 3 months until we have our audit done and we have an actual number as opposed to a projected number. Even if we choose to spend the 146 that Selena is identifying, we're still coming under Tanya's projected fund balance amount. And so that might make sense, but all these other items can easily be added with a simple budget amendment 3 months from now when we know what we actually have as opposed to what we don't know. So I agree with Mr. Jackson. Most of these items can wait until we have our audit completed.
I'll add also that even though it's the lowest or the lesser of the line items, the Granicus, I think would be premature at this time. We just got the planning board recommendations. It was not unanimous. I envision that whatever action, whether it is action or no action at all, is going to be heavily debated.
Mhm.
And it's going to take more than one meeting. And I don't think putting that $10,000 outlay for Granicus would be appropriate at this time. I think that in particular would be something to be addressed later. Because we don't even know what we're going to do.
Right.
Mhm.
And if we were gonna go up to the 200 site, you know, I really think that the nature park upgrades, we've been talking about that for years, especially after doing the stormwater test study. And I was wondering if there's a way to maybe only do part of it. There's 2 ponds, if you just did 1 pond now and maybe another one next year.
Would you like to elaborate on that? You have some ideas.
Mhm.
Wish I had those numbers in front of me, but the 2 ponds, the one that's down below the clock lot, that was about half the cost of the one that's directly here behind Town Hall. So seems like it's in the 70,000 range, something like that. So another one is more like 150 or something. So that'd certainly be an option to do just one this coming fiscal year.
Mary Roderick, who is with Land to Sky and has been a great partner with the town on stormwater issues. She's also looking to see if she can identify some grant funding sources as well. So that could wait, but it could also very easily be made into 2 projects.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
I have one other comment just on the grapple truck with the knuckle boom loader. After our last meeting, I did talk to Dale because I had a misconception of something. I thought, well, the grapple truck was a great tool to pick up debris and transport it to a dedicated site to do the chipping. But in my head, I still had that people would still be feeding the chipper. And Mr. Pennell has corrected me on that. And I know that might have been the idea that others might have had as well. It actually does both. It takes the debris, puts it in the truck, transports it to the dedicated chipping site that is not surrounded by metal and available to ricochet. But the grapple, actually, the loader will actually load and feed the chipper. And considering that this was the #1 source of work comp claims, is that right? That I'm a little more on board with the grapple truck than I was a month ago. So
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, the grapple truck is a safety issue.
right.
And I think,
I didn't know how the safety was really being addressed, and now I do.
Kind of feel like we should get that in there somehow.
back to my numbers here, and I don't do math well, but we'll try this. The things that you suggested, Selena, came to about 147,000. If we take out the Granicus, we're just 10,000 down from that. So to do that $147,000 worth plus the grapple truck, we're about 80,000 short. Does that sound right?
No,
So, yeah, so if we were to do those things as a starting point and the grapple truck, then we would just need to take 80,000 from the fund balance, and I don't know
It'd be
what
about
percentage of that is.
40 or something.
It's 364, 800 total.
What was 85,000?
So it's 164,800 short.
Yeah. And it just increases your potential of dropping below that 40% target, which again is about a $3 million.
And again,
Amount.
we'll go with the audit. I mean, I wouldn't bet my life on it, but, I feel firm, I feel very strong that we will make that up with audit and revenues potential revenue increased over what we budgeted, as well as what our department heads do always do, and that is turn funds back to the
What's the lead time on the grapple truck?
That's that question of we really.
It, our street sweeper was about 8 months and garbage truck is going on 12. But they told us the axle was ready to be installed.
And how much
3
was,
weeks.
and what was the deposit, or what would a deposit be on something like that?
Don't usually do deposits.
Okay.
We pay for it when it comes in.
Okay. I kind of feel like we should just do it.
So Lena, you know, I was just thinking, we go ahead and get the gravel truck, put it in the budget, and then hold off until October 3rd to see how money is to do the parking lot. That would make it even, because it's 85,000.
Can't pave when it's cold. And we want to pave it now, don't we, Dale?
We're actually, have discussed making that a gravel parking lot for the time being.
Okay.
And then leaving it that way for a year or so to make sure there's no soft places and then pave it.
Good.
So
That would take care of it.
Yeah.
That would lower.
Yeah.
That would lower the 85.
That's good.
Well,
Yeah.
we were 85
I like
foot
that.
roughly.
It seems like the four that you've identified plus the grapple truck, it seems like we can work this all in here pretty well.
And it seems like we actually agree on it, so that's a good thing.
If there's consent, if I see the heads nodding to go that route, and you're looking at Patrick here too, you barely see him. We will absolutely include those and have the documents ready for you to adopt next week.
I have a question, and maybe I just haven't seen it here in the budget. But one of the things that we need to include in the budget by the end of June, sorry, is the town manager's salary and agreement. I mean, that's part of this fiscal budget. So we have from your attorney a proposed job description and a proposed employment agreement. Does that need to be part of this budget, or should that be part of this budget?
I think ultimately the goal would be that salaries be included in the budget, and the employment agreement set forward was to be effective with July.
Yeah, I saw that on the letter from the attorney that it's a July 1 date. I don't see that anywhere in here. Is it anywhere in here?
The agreement has not been adopted.
Okay.
It'll be retroactive whenever we finally get to it. It will, whatever that is, you'll get the backdated, I'm sure. And it'll be put into the budget then, right? Isn't that normally how things do? Like when we got around to finally giving you a raise last time, it was around September. I think it wasn't the 1st of July.
No, it wasn't, but I think there have been a lot of questions as to whether I have an agreement. And so, you know, so if there's not consensus to sign an agreement, to update my agreement, then there are different ways of looking at that.
Well, a couple of things is doing this retroactive is not the normal. Is that correct? I mean, if it's part of the fiscal year budget, then in previous years before I was here, was that not just agreed upon by the end of June as part of the budget? Along with all salaries and everything else on here. So there's that. Last year, we didn't get around to it till September or October, but I don't know if that's the norm. And if the employment agreement is, and the salary is to be part of this budget, I think we just need to move forward with that.
Well, you don't really do things like that in a closed session, but if we really want to talk about it here, I'm sure we could.
We could talk about it here. I mean, we have the agreement, right? I have it here. I printed copies of it if y'all want a copy of the employment agreement.
If I could interrupt for just a second, we are in a special called meeting where we are limited to budget, and this conversation certainly is budget oriented. So I would caution you in getting into a unadvertised part of a special called meeting. And so I think focusing on the budget issues related to that, I think is appropriate. Tanya, could you maybe let town council know what was budgeted in? Was there an increase that was budgeted for her?
We included the town manager with everyone else as far as the 3%,
And the 2%.
cost of living and 2% merit.
So
So
there-
right now, 5% is budgeted in the proposed budget. Because we don't know what you're gonna decide on, if it's more or less. If it's less, it's already there. If it's more in years past,
And we're going to meet a week from today and have another budget workshop a week from today. And that's the meeting where we want to just finalize this so that we can just have a vote on it and be done with it. Is that correct? So we need to do this between now and next Tuesday. Is that correct?
The only way to do that would be to do it now or have a special call meeting.
We can have a special call meeting and do it in closed session if we have to.
You could also have a closed session item on your town council meeting next Tuesday at the front of your meeting, so that you can kind of figure out what you're doing at that point, and then that your decisions on your budget. I will say my experience has been, it is not been uncommon to go out past July 1 and
Right.
make a decision retroactive. That's probably been done as much as it has been done on time, just historically, but you typically do in attorney and town manager contracts at the same schedule.
And the amount is, and as Tanya said, the amount is already budgeted. It's included in the budget anyway. So when we do it, it's kind of irrelevant at this point.
Well, it's not irrelevant because the amount that's being asked is like a 13% increase, and what's in the budget right now would be 5%.
Never got what. I've never, mine nor the town attorney's salaries have been calculated.
I think it's not irrelevant because we've been talking about it for 5 months. How much longer are we going to drag this out before we come up with an employment agreement and just be done with it?
Sounds like we need to have a special meeting next week.
Tuesday of next week? Is that what we're thinking?
So do you want just if you wanted to meet on Tuesday, are you talking about a separate meeting, or are you talking about adding or considering the employment contract in closed session during the one that is currently scheduled,
Adding to the current,
adding to that agenda?
is that?
Yes.
Correct. Agree.
And then we would come to an agreement in that closed session, and then we incorporate it into this budget that we're going to vote on next Tuesday.
So that absolutely should happen. You can't, while you can discuss an employment contract in closed session, actually voting to approve that must be done in
Yeah,
open
yeah.
session. And then that will clarify what you need to do as far as the budget.
Okay. So does somebody need to make a motion that we have a closed session next time to discuss this?
I'm watching y'all, and it seems like there's a consensus, and I'm pretty sure that it was already planned to have a closed session on that workshop anyway, and so we'll just make sure that it's included.
Okay.
Okay, we will build the budget based on the enhanced additions that they have approved and bring it forward to you and make it pretty simple.
After the closed session.
All right, do we have any more questions, comments, discussion? Or are we adjourned? I guess we're adjourned. Thank you.